Safe is a fallacy. Nothing's safe. Your job isn't safe. Your degree isn't safe. Your business isn't safe. If something wasn't working, I have to be able to quickly adapt.
Shamus Madan launched his first podcast at 15, just like me. But by 19, he had already built a media company, worked in venture capital, and convinced billionaire entrepreneurs to sit down for interviews with a teenager. What was the first time you delivered value to someone and saw their attitude toward you completely change?
That's a losing formula, like 99% of the time. Like, you're gonna lose. You're not tracking something directly, you will fail. Instead, I kind of take a look at things at partnering, which means any person that I either connect with or have a conversation with, I don't really care too much about what they're gonna give me. I only care about how I can help them.
Now, I have AI writing emails, analyzing data, and creating content. Does that make building easier, or does it risk making our generation lazy?
I think if you're not learning how to use AI to the best of its capabilities, not just the general purpose layer, but leveling it up beyond that, you'll lose for sure.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the AI Parenting Institute. I'm your host, Ryan Ali, and our mission on this podcast is to bridge the gap between today's leading AI experts and the parents and teens who are shaping the world of tomorrow. Today, I'm talking to someone who might just be the most relatable guest I've ever had on the podcast. Not because we share the same background, but because we started our journeys at the exact same age. Shamus Madan launched his first podcast at 15, just like me. But by 19, he had already built a media company, worked in venture capital, and convinced billionaire entrepreneurs to sit down for interviews with a teenager. What makes Shamus really stand out are his unconventional philosophies, like deleting work-life balance and partnering instead of networking. And in a world where AI can generate anything in seconds, I want to know, what does it actually take to build and lead a company that's real? So whether you're a teen wondering if you're crazy for wanting to start something big, or a parent trying to understand what's going on in your ambitious child's head, this conversation is packed with insights you won't want to miss. Shamus, welcome to the podcast. I'm honored to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, let's start with something I've been wondering lately. How did you land your first billionaire interview? What did that first initial yes look like? And how did you get people to take you seriously at just 15?
Yeah, good question. Let me start from the top. So, I started a podcast when I was 15. The original goal was to create business news, basically syndicate content from CNBC, Wall Street Journal, etc., and put it into business news. Didn't really work. The biggest way we were able to get big guests on very early on in the show and interview them and sit down with them really came down to a couple key things. The first is okay, we really have to take a look at it from their perspective. So when I first tried to get big guests on Mark Cuban, Tim Draper, Marcus Lemonis, those were the big guests I pitched very early on in the show. None of them responded except Mark Cuban, and he said, I don't have the time to do it. When I sent that email, I'm going to basically break down exactly what I sent. The email I sent was hey, I'm a 15-year-old podcaster. I run this show. Would love to have you on to talk about Bitcoin, NFTs, stuff he was talking about a lot on Twitter at the time. And turns out he didn't honestly care enough. And also our audience was really small. So I realized that taught me something really invaluable about sales and trying to convince people to do something in this case, which is they don't give a fuck about you. Oh, can I curse or no?
No, that's fine. You go ahead.
Okay. They don't care about you, right? All they care about is themselves primarily. So you have to figure out how can you position yourself to help the person on the other end. Mm-hmm. So I realized I actually didn't have any value that I could give Mark Cuban at the time. We were really small. There wasn't a lot of value there. So instead, I spent a lot of time trying to build up the show, try to build up an audience, try to build up a following, and try to build up a reputation. Once we kind of built that up and got our first big guest, Spencer Raskoff, on, who was a founder of Zillow. I followed up 4 times, by the way, to make that one happen. I then was randomly scrolling through, one day I was randomly scrolling through Twitter, and I see Mark Cuban put out a post for Cost Plus Drugs. And he's telling everybody about this affordable medication company that can save people a lot of money. And I'm wait, he's really promoting this. He's going on a bunch of podcasts talking about this. Every single thing that he's putting out on social media is about Cost Plus Drugs. Why can't I kind of help him get the word out? So instead, I sent him an email again about 8 months after the initial email. And I said, hey, Mark, my name's Sheamus, just following up. We grew the audience by 200%. So I gave him a big success metric, 200% growth. I named him like a top guest that we've had on. And then I gave him, pitched him, I'm like, hey, we can get the word out on Cost Plus Drugs. So the value that I offered to give him is basically press or get more people to hear about the company. And then I included two things about me that may be important paying attention to. So, age, and then accomplish cool things at a young age. Being really young is a massive competitive advantage. I think you start, as you probably noticed, like you start when you're 15, 16, 17, even any age below 20, basically, or even below 21. It's a massive competitive advantage. You can open up doors that most people would have never been able to open up before.
Those were some great insights, and I want to know why you started with quick news bites and then pivoted to long form interviews. Most people my age would just stick to what's safe. So, what made you realize you had to switch directions, and how did you trust your instincts at just 15?
To be honest, the way I think about entrepreneurship is not, or even life in general, is safe is a fallacy. Like nothing's safe. Your job isn't safe. Your degree isn't safe. Your business isn't safe. No matter how much money in the bank you have in the bank, it's never truly safe. So I realized, like, hey, if something wasn't working, I have to be able to quickly adapt. In that case, we had, after about 8 months, we had or 6 months, we had 8 listeners, 5 of which are my family. So I could either, one, keep pushing the pedal to the metal and try something that clearly wasn't working, or two, I could try to do some more research on the market and try to figure out what people actually wanted to hear. I decided to go option 2 because there were 2 scenarios that could basically happen. One is I keep doing what I'm doing, no change, no growth, and we stunt. We basically flatline. Option 2 is I pivot, we change, we deliver more value to the audience, and then we grow a lot. That was thing 1 on why I had the courage to do it. And then I think the other thing was I honestly didn't like doing the business news stuff, compiling a bunch of, I was basically adding no new value. I was literally taking stuff from CNBC and regurgitating it in my words. So it was pretty boring, honestly. It was painstaking work. And after 3 episodes, I couldn't do it anymore. The interviews, I've done north of 150 interviews to date. I still love doing them. I don't get bored of them at all. And I think that is a really key factor where I was able to keep doing them over and over again and not get bored. And I think that's when you probably have something that you're on the right track.
Exactly. Loving what you do helps is the real motivation. Yeah. So you talk about partnering instead of networking, which is a perspective most people don't look at. So what was the first time you delivered value to someone and saw their attitude toward you completely change? I know you kind of answered that in your first answer, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very good question. I think most people in business, when they're trying to network or quote unquote network, this is how most people approach it. They'll send a connection request on LinkedIn and that's pretty much it. They'll be like, hey, it was great to meet, or just send a connection request with literally no context. That's a losing formula, 99% of the time. You're going to lose. And if you're at events or anything like that with the sole purpose of exchanging LinkedIns and trying to meet people and quote unquote network, and that doesn't actually have a direct, you're not tracking something directly, you will fail. People are busy in their own lives. They don't have time to try to quote unquote network and exchange LinkedIns and talk to you and add people to their network. It's all a bunch of bullshit. Most people, when they try to do stuff like that, they're going to lose. Instead, I kind of take a look at things as partnering, which means any person that I either connect with or have a conversation with, I don't really care too much about what they're going to give me. I only care about how I can help them. And chances are, if I can help them, they could probably help me in some way, shape, or form anyway. For example, when we started about a year into the agency, close to a year into the agency, we pivoted from doing PR, the agency we have today, PR to LinkedIn content. And our first customer that we signed, I was still in school, still in college, and it was our first big deal. It was huge to me. It was the most amount of money I've ever seen in my life. It was got a check for $5,000 that they sent me, and it felt like a lot of money at the time. And we closed that deal, and the only contractual obligation we had to them was to create content for them and help them basically go viral on LinkedIn. That was it. As long as we delivered on that, they would probably keep paying us. We did a lot more than that. We introduced them to potential customers, potential investors. It basically made about in the first month or two, we made close to 6 intros to a combination of potential customers and potential investors into the company. Did we have to do that? No, but I think that's where the conversation on over delivering and partnering really allows you to step up. And that allowed us, because we spent so much time investing in that relationship, they ended up referring us to another company to work with. And that company became our second largest client to date.
Wow.
So there's that's honestly the biggest way I would think about partnering.
Mm-hmm. All right. I want to test your delete work-life balance philosophy with some real scenarios. I'm going to give you 3 and just give me a yes or no answer. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Scenario 1. It's your best friend's birthday party, but you have the chance to hop on a last-minute call with a potential mentor who's only available that night. Skip the party?
Yep.
Okay. You're exhausted from staying up late, working on your business for weeks, and your parents are worried about your grades slipping. Keep pushing or take a break?
Honestly, this one depends on context. Like, I think if your business isn't working and your grades are slipping, yeah, you should probably take a break on the business and go back to school. If your business is working, which I had a very similar scenario, and your grades are slipping, then yes, keep pushing on the business. But it's situation dependent.
Okay. Your significant other says they never see you anymore because you're always working. Risk the relationship or business?
No.
Okay. Those answers are great. Now let's head back to the questions. Your show up in person when it makes no sense rule sounds scary but exciting. What's the craziest trip you made as a teen that people thought was insane but actually ended up paying off?
Yeah, there's a couple, and there's one we're doing actually next week, but there's a couple of different ones. The first one is about a year and a half ago. About a year and a half ago, I was in my gap year in between high school and college, and there was this big startup grind event in San Francisco, and I found out about it literally 2 weeks before it was going to happen. At this point, I probably to my name maybe had like $7,000 in my bank account. I like not a lot. Like the trip itself cost like $1,500. And I was like, okay, like I really think I should go to it. The people that were speaking there was Tim Draper, Pear, Pejman Nozad, who runs a VC firm called Pear, and who's an early investor in Dropbox, and Jack Altman. And I was like, you know what? I think it's really worth going. I told my parents, like, hey, I really want to go to San Francisco to this event in Redwood City. And they're both like, I don't know, like, how much value do you think you could really get out of this? Like, I don't think it really matters. And I'm like, push really hard. I'm like, I think I really have to go. So eventually booked the trip. I fly out to San Francisco, and as I'm walking, I'm in between the events, and as I'm walking to go get lunch at Chipotle, I'm walking down the sidewalk, and at the corner of my eye, I see Jack Altman exit out of the secret exit out of the back. Nobody's around him except like maybe like one like assistant, but nobody even knows he's there. And I'm like, shoot, this is my opportunity. So I run up to him, and I tell him about the podcast and like what we do, asked him for some advice, and then eventually invited him on the show, and that's a work in progress. But wow. It was he gave me really good advice that day. One of which was to really focus highly on quality over quantity of your product and of your service. And yeah, it was definitely a big life changer. Before that, we were very focused, especially on content. We played the Gary Vee game where we're trying to push out as much as we possibly can. No disrespect to Gary Vee. I absolutely love him. He's a big inspiration of mine. But we switched from number of pieces of content to more of like, how can we create the highest quality content? And that was a big shift for the business, and that basically led us to where we are today. But that was a big trip, probably one of the bigger trips that I can think of.
Yeah, I love that story. And I want to talk about me reading your post about you saying that when you were 15, you used to hustle with cold emails and a lot of hard work. Now, I have AI writing emails, analyzing data, and creating content. So, does that make building easier, or does it risk making our generation lazy? From your perspective, I want to know, should AI be seen as a superpower or as a trap?
I think it's a combination of both. I think the benefit of AI is the bar to entry to do things like this go down to even further. It was already really down with the internet. Like basically anybody now, like through platforms like this, can create podcasts and stuff like that. Bar to entry is pretty low. It lowered even further with the democratization of being able to create content and stuff like that.
Mm.
I think the big thing that we will start seeing going forward is the baseline for content will be a little bit higher. So like before AI, the baseline for content was pretty, like for good content was okay. It was like, if you want great content, it's not super hard to create it. I think because AI flooded the market with like the amount of content that you can produce at scale, and it's not super hard to create good content, the baseline honestly just rose. So now a lot of people that are using AI, at least these general purpose models without like doing any custom prompting or training, you're not going to get a lot of high ROI. It's going to be exactly like if you didn't use AI to begin with in terms of results.
Mhm.
If you're just talking about quantity and like being able to put out more content, yes, you can do that. But if you're talking about results and views and stuff like that, I think it just lowers the bar. In terms of like whether it's a good thing or bad thing, I think it's here, and I think the way I kind of use AI is I try not to use it in like a lot of personal situations. So if I'm thinking about, I don't know, if I was speaking to a friend about relationship advice or friendship advice or anything like that, not going to talk about or not going to try to leverage AI for advice for that. I think you should basically try to figure that out yourself. We shouldn't have AI do all of our thinking. But other than that, I think you should leverage it as much as possible, especially on the business side, because if you don't, like, you're going to lose. And I think big problem with schools today is they don't leverage it enough and they treat it more as a punishment. And I think any institution in America that is treating AI as a punishment or students leveraging AI as a punishment will ultimately crumble if they don't fix that. It's changing. You are then outputting students who are not prepared for the workforce. It's going to be a real problem. We're hiring now, but we've been hiring for content roles the past couple months. And both times, like we've had multiple times where we've interviewed people and gave people test projects and they just couldn't leverage AI because they just didn't know how to. They didn't, kind of learn to use it. I think that is a big downside. So I think if you're not learning how to use AI to the best of its capabilities, not just the general purpose layer, but leveling it up beyond that, you'll lose for sure.
Those are some great insights. Now, you say over delivery isn't charity, but in a world where everything is free, from essays, logos, and code, how do teens actually stand out without getting taken advantage of?
How do they stand out in like what way?
You could say it like the business way, like me, I'm creating the podcast. How do we stand out from our competitors?
I mean, it depends on the business. But in this case, like the way we stand out comes down to a couple different things. So for context on our business, we do like LinkedIn content for founders and executives. The biggest way we stand out from a lot of other, agencies or companies doing similar things comes down to two things. One is our quality of our service. So the hit rate on viral content for us is significantly higher than most agencies. It's north of 50%, which is like literally one of the top that you can possibly get. Like more than 50% of our content goes viral. Very high. So one is quality. I think that's one way to differentiate. It takes the most time. Two, I think is really comes down in our business to relationships. So we focus very heavily on building much longer term relationships and we've turned down tens of thousands of dollars in deals in short term deals in the hopes that in the long term it'll pay off even further. For example, we've had a lot of early stage founders that will come to us that are too early stage to work with us and want to pay us, and we turn those deals down because we think ultimately they're too early. And instead, we actually give them our playbook and free advice, and hopefully that they can implement that, they can grow their businesses, and maybe a year or two later down the line when their business grows, they'll think of us first as the ones that actually truly help them to begin with, and they'll want to work with us. So I think one is relationships, and then two is the quality of content you deliver. And a third thing is just speed. Like if you can execute faster than anybody else on the planet, like you will win. We operate extremely fast. Like our average response time to a client is under 4 minutes. We're very quick. There are times where we're responding to clients in under 20 seconds, and that could be at like 1 a.m. Like we're just always online. You can't beat me. Like there's nobody else on the planet that will be able to do that at our level of scale, because the only way you do beat me is you literally just die from working too hard. So I think that's one of the things that separates us out right now is the quality, hustle, and then third is the relationships.
Those were some great that was some great advice. And honestly, parents worry that AI chatbots will replace real human mentors. From your podcast, at least, you've had access to some of the best human mentors out there. So, what's one thing AI will never be able to teach me? This one's a hard question.
I think in theory it can teach you a lot. I think the one thing it can't teach as effectively. So I think the thing with me is that when I was growing the business and starting the podcast and everything like that, I could probably Google like the same information that I was asking a lot of the guests. Like probably Google it, probably ChatGPT it. Like there was no real super deep need to actually hop on an interview and ask them those questions. Like especially after ChatGPT came out, it was probably a way where I could have just gave the questions to ChatGPT and had ChatGPT answer them. In theory, it would answer it. I think that's fine. I think the thing that it comes down to is not like can it teach you? It's like who, as humans, who are we going to actually listen to and respect? And I think AI is good for like a lot of general advice and in helping with that. I think if we're trying to, for example, build like a billion-dollar space company, I think regardless of whether AI, like ChatGPT has all that information to do it, or if you can get the same direct information from Elon Musk, you're probably going to take an hour-long conversation with Elon Musk than you will with an hour-long conversation with ChatGPT, just because we respect that reputation. And I think that will never go away, is that humans in general like always look up to other people and associate some sort of status or level of accomplishment with that, and will inherently end up paying more attention to those conversations and to those people, and then ask them deeper questions that they might not have asked in AI. And I think, like, for example, with me, like when I am listening to like the opinions of those around me on how to build and scale our business, I trust a person way more. Like, for example, if we're talking about like finance and taxes, tax purposes, taxes for the company, I trust like a founder of mine or founder friend of mine who built a $10 million agency business and has dealt with taxes before for 5-10 years, way more than I would trust like ChatGPT or any AI tool to possibly give me advice on that. So I think it really comes down to trust and reputation, which is the big value point.
I agree. Yeah. So I'm 15, the same age you started, but AI is everywhere now. So what's one thing you wish someone had told you at 15 that would help our generation not just survive, but thrive in the AI era?
Honestly, I think the biggest thing is experiment, and experiment more than you think you have to. The biggest reason why we are where we are at today is because we experiment a lot with content generation in general, and then we leverage AI a ton. And every day we're experimenting with new prompts, new training data, everything to constantly try to improve. There's literally not a day in the week that we're not reprompting or retraining or doing some sort of experimentation. I think very similarly, the same goes for a lot of students and people out there, especially kids, is you should at least spend 30 minutes every single day experimenting with AI and beyond the surface level questions. Like forget about initially, asking questions about like, oh, how many, or solve this math problem or stuff like that. Totally cool. Eventually, maybe get to the point where you build your own model to solve math problems or something similar. So I think especially now where ChatGPT you can build your own model and do stuff like that. I would experiment a lot with like building your own systems and tools that you think is fun, and it's easier than ever. Like before, you had to learn how to code or build things. Now you don't. You just got to know like a language, and you just got to be able to talk or write. As long as you can do one of those two things, you can build pretty much anything you possibly could imagine.
Wow. Okay. I need a minute to process everything we talked about today. Shamus, thank you so much for being honest about your journey. And hearing how you navigated those early years really boosts my confidence about the path I'm on. Sometimes, when you're 15 and trying to do something ambitious, you feel like you're the only one dealing with these problems. But this conversation reminded me that other people have been here, figured it out, and succeeded. Thank you, Shamus, once again, as this was one of the most relatable conversations I've ever had.
Thanks for having me.
To the teens listening now, don't wait until you're ready or until you have more experience. Your age isn't holding you back, your hesitation is. And to the parents, maybe that gives you some insight into why these projects matter so much to us when they seem impractical or risky. You can find all of Shamus's work and links to the D Room in the description below. Make sure to check them out. And if this conversation changed how you think about AI in kids, help me get this message out to more parents. Subscribe to the AI Parenting Institute and share this with a parent who's stressed about AI. And drop a comment. I want to know, who would you like to see next on the podcast? Once again, I'm Ryan, and thank you for trusting me with your time and your biggest parenting concerns. Until next time, let's keep building a future where kids don't adapt to change, they create it.